We will go ahead and kick things off this morning.
Welcome.
Welcome. Start with introductions. We'll start down with Jim.
Jim Parent, City of Lawrence.
Dax Warner, Town of Bargersville.
Andrew Klinger, Town of Plainfield.
Luke Maston, Johnson County. Tim Brock, Town of Cleveland.
Steve Barnett, City of Franklin.
Brad Davis, Hamilton County. Mark Airwright, Hamilton County.
Anna Gremling with the IMPO.
Mark Myers, City of Greenwood.
Jim Kaufman, City of Peach Grove.
Mark Morgan, Town of Danville.
Christine Altman, Serta.
Nick Parr, Boone County.
Tim Byer, Boone County.
Lance Lance, Town of Zionsville.
Steve Moore, Avon.
Jen Huberman, IMPO.
Cole Jackson, NGO. Michael Lewis, Lockmuir Group. Greg Budd, HNTV.
Kate Zale, EMCS.
Andrea Miller, IMPO. Danielle Fry, IMPO. Amanda Meyer, CERTA.
Dave Cochran, City of Peach Grove.
Go ahead.
Ryan.
Ryan Wilhite, Indigo.
Perfect timing. In the back row.
Brian Mitchman, HNT.
Kia Gillette, HNTV.
Sandra Amanda.
Tessie Ryder, CC.
Okay, well, welcome everybody and thanks for coming. The first item we have is the minutes from August 20th, 2025. I take it everybody got those electronically. Do we have any additions or corrections?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I move for approval of minutes.
Okay, a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next, TIP amendments 26 through 20, Cole Jackson.
Hello. Okay, we have Q4 TIP amendments for you. These are amendments to the 26 to 29 TIP. That is the new TIP that has been federally approved since you all approved it earlier this year. It's gone through the full federal approval process, so we are amending the 26 to 29 TIP. This is going to be including exempt and non-exempt amendments. Exempt amendments are amendments that are not regionally significant for air quality. Non-exempt amendments are significant for air quality. We did have two pre-hearings on Monday. We did not receive any public comments on these, but we do have another public hearing today. And then if you all want to do the public hearing now, I can present on the call for projects after.
Okay, we will open this up for public comment. Do we have any public comment? Going once, and twice. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, the call for projects is open. So it opened on 10/6 and it does close on Black Friday. The federal fund exchange projects are for 2029. That is going to be the most projects. So SDVG, HSIP, and CMAQ, those are all 2029 state fiscal year lettings. Federal funds is going to be in 2031. That is only going to be for TA, which is mostly the trail bike ped funding. Total funding available is 72.2 million, which is a little bit more than I told you all last time, with inflation at 4%. This is the first call for projects with the new allocation goals. So in the MTP that you all approved a year and a half ago, you adopted new allocation goals for what we're going to be spending money on. These are the goals. Intersection improvements is a new category and is the largest category. So that is just the largest change for this year. ADA and PROAG is also a change, or ADA and Title VI, I should say. ADA and Title VI information has changed from NDOT. Because we are a subrecipient, we need to follow their subrecipient monitoring requirements. For us, that means that if you submit to us for funding, we do need a copy of your ADA transition plan or whatever ADA documents you do have, and your Title VI / non-discrimination policy. You also need to send that to NDOT. That was due October 1st of this year. So if you have not sent that to them, go ahead and send it to them. If you need to know who to contact, let me know. But go ahead and send that to NDOT and include it with your application if you're applying to us. We did do a training on ADA and PROAG. It's there, there's a QR code. It's also under resources. If you go to LPA resources, it's always going to be there. That covers both ADA and PROAG requirements to help you stay compliant with the states and federal law. Also upcoming, this is not on this amendment that you all approved, but the next amendment is going to be our cost exchange for our cost increases for MPO funded projects. So once a year, we do a cost increase for MPO funded projects. These are from projects that you all awarded funding to 18 months ago, so 2 call for projects ago. This is going to be in the next set of amendments. We have about 2.5 million set aside for those cost increase requests. Of that, they need to be for unforeseen circumstances and no more than 10% funding increase requests. So I know you all read the packet in detail every time, but next time you might want to look at it more just to see what cost increase requests are there. Everyone who is eligible has been notified, and they're all going to include a memo that outlines why they're making the request and the unforeseen circumstances that they have. Any questions on the call for projects? Great, thank you.
Cole, can you please stay up there? So while we opened the public hearing and closed it, we did not call for a vote. So I just want to make sure we do that while you're up.
Yep. Do you have a motion for approval?
So moved. Altman?
And a second?
Johnson County.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Sorry, Cole, you jumped me on that
Can
one.
I ask a question
Yes.
about the pre-hearing? I know we didn't have any public comment, did we have any attendance?
Yes, we had Taylor Firestein from Health by Design. He made a comment on the coordinated plan, which they will present on.
Thanks.
Okay, next. Coordinated plan with Jen.
Yes, I'm gonna see if I can get that thing to go out of the way.
I will say Jen is pitching. Annie
Yes.
Dixon is in Hawaii. One, she
Business?
pleasure.
There's a Hawaii though, so.
There is a Hawaiian. Yeah, so
That work.
I know.
I am Jen Higginbotham, and I am not the project manager for this. I'm pitch hitting, as Anna said, so forgive me if I stumble as I go through these slides. It's only gonna take a minute. You guys saw these last time. But we did update our coordinated public transit human services transportation plan. We typically call it the coordinated plan. It was last updated in 2021. This is a plan that applies to the section 5310 funding that comes from FTA for providers that give those services to primarily people with disabilities and seniors. So they need to have this plan is a requirement for them to request those 5310 funds. The timeline, it's been about 7 months. We kicked off in April. We've had a couple of stakeholder meetings, open houses. There have been some online meetings and a public comment period that was September 18th through October 3rd. We did not receive comments during that public comment period, but I did, as was mentioned, receive a comment from Health by Design during the pre-hearing. I'll read that in a few minutes. In the coordinated plan, it identifies needs and gaps for the existing service. The thing to note on this slide is that the most critical needs, the top three, are not enough funding, not enough hours and days of service, and not enough service to all demanded locations. And those are at the bottom of the feasible list. So the highest needs, most critical needs are the least feasible to address. So that's just something that we're constantly working through. The plan does identify goals in order for those transportation providers to request that funding. They have to tie it back to the goals in the plan. There are 4 goals. They include maintain and improve existing service. This is things like increasing the days and hours, making the transportation service more reliable and predictable, coordinating programs and services. So having like region-wide programs, like region-wide fare structures, or having cross-county scheduling, complementing the public transportation, so increasing the access to out-of-county destinations, trying to make that go farther, supporting trips not serviced by public transportation. And then the 4th goal is educate decision makers on trying to demonstrate the need for transportation funding, but also increasing the numbers of people with disabilities and older adults that can be on those bodies that can actually help make those decisions about what happens to those services. So as I mentioned, there was a public comment period, but during the pre-hearing on Monday, we received comments from Health by Design. I'm just going to read them real quick because there's not very many of them. Health by Design will continue, this came from Taylor Firestein. Health by Design will continue to support safe infrastructure and built environment fixes that expand access to service, especially to our most vulnerable neighbors. Health by Design will also continue educating the public on the critical importance of public transportation as essential public health infrastructure in our communities. We will continue advocating for increases in the state's public mass transportation fund, as well as other local funding mechanisms to increase transit access and quality in central Indiana. Health by Design is committed to fostering relationships with public transit providers in central Indiana through participation in Transit Drives Indy, Certus, County Connect meetings, to improve coordination and information sharing. And as a stakeholder, Health by Design thanks the IMPO and consultant team for a smooth and informative planning process. We look forward to supporting the Indianapolis MPO, CERTA, Indigo, Access Johnson County, and other partners to address needs and gaps clearly outlined within the plan. So positive comments. There were a couple of follow-up questions. Those answers have been shared with him. So at this time, I believe we have a public hearing, and then we are asking for adoption of this plan.
Yeah, I'll do it right this time. Do I have a motion to approve?
Public
So
hearing,
moved.
Public hearing first.
public hearing.
Okay,
Sorry.
Next
we did
time.
it different, guys. We'll open it up for public hearing. Any comments? Seeing none, close the public hearing. Now do we have a motion to approve?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve. Steve Morrison.
Tim, second?
Second Indigo.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Public Involvement Plan, Danielle Fry.
Hi, I do not have a presentation for you. I presented on the updates at the August meeting, but I'm going to kind of go over some of the highlights again. The Public Involvement Plan is reviewed and updated every 4 years. Key changes in this 2025 update are we are hosting pre-hearings the Monday before policy and public hearings. So as you heard from some of the other plans that we were adopting today, we hosted a public hearing, a pre-hearing on Monday. We've been doing those. I think this is the third time this year. So this is, we've been put this into process already. It's been working well. We've only had a couple of attendees, but it's nice that we're having that option now. We are aligning the TIP amendments and MTP amendment comment periods to 10 days to match for easier noticing, less public confusion. We updated the data in the language access plan, naming only the Indianapolis Stars, the paper of record, and updating the program of project statement. We also created the engagement toolkit as a companion piece to the PIP to help the IMPO go above and beyond what is required and outlined in the PIP. One public comment was received during the 45-day comment period. It was from Health by Design, and it is included in your packet. It doesn't involve really any changes. There were some suggestions for inclusion in the engagement toolkit and noticed a grammatical error. Any questions?
Questions from the board? Okay, we will open this one up for a public hearing as well. Any comments from the public? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing. Do you have a motion to approve?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
So
sir.
moved. City of Lawrence.
Do you have a second?
Second Franklin.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries as well, thank you. NDOT Propel. Do we have anybody?
Yeah, we have a whole team from both NDOT and H&T. The Kia Gillette is going to be starting us off.
Just arrow to advance. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, guys. Is there a way for me this to, oh, yes. Ah, thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, well, thanks, everybody. We are excited to be here to talk to you and give you an update about Propel Indy. Propel Indy is a planning and environment linkage study, or PEL. It is being conducted in accordance with 23 CFR 450 And what that does is it bridges the planning process with the National Environmental Policy Act process, or NEPA. Propel Indy is a collaborative effort to reimagine the future of I-65 and I-70 within the I-465 loop in Indianapolis. And over the past 2 years, Central Indiana residents, commuters, businesses, and neighborhoods have shared their ideas, concerns, and insights for the future of these interstates. Propel Indy's study area includes approximately 26 miles of I-65 and I-70 within the I-465 loop. Now, as an organizational tool, we've broken the study area into 4 different spokes. The 65 spoke is the red spoke on the northwest side of town. The blue spoke is the 65-70 downtown spoke. On the west side is the 70 west spoke in yellow, and the 70 east spoke is in green. This study launched in the spring of 2023. And since that time, we have made a concerted effort to engage with the public. The study team has attended more than 130 events, and we've received over 1,600 comments from stakeholders who use, work, or live near the interstates. Now, this feedback, alongside our team's collection and analysis of data, helped us to identify the transportation needs in the study area. These include aging bridge and pavement condition, roadway safety, roadway mobility, and limited neighborhood and multimodal connections. Now, the purpose of Propel Indy is to identify potential solutions to address these needs. In December of last year, we released the Universe of Concepts report, which included a wide range of possibilities that could be applied at one or more locations along those spokes. These concepts were evaluated, and 14 of them were carried forward for further consideration. Now that brings us to where we are now, the release of the study's draft alternatives identification and screening report, or step 4. This is a key milestone in the study process where we have developed and evaluated planning level alternatives to address the identified needs on I-65 and I-70. Now, in addition, and in response to public feedback, the report also introduces neighborhood and connectivity planning principles to guide future interstate projects toward better integration with the surrounding communities. These principles emphasize safer and more accessible walking, biking, and connections across and near the interstates. Our urban planners evaluated the study spokes to identify ways to potentially add, improve, or enhance connectivity and placemaking specific at each location's needs. And you can find the connectivity considerations in the alternatives identification and evaluation chapter specific to that spoke in the report. Now we'll walk through the primary focus of the report, the identification and evaluation of alternatives. Planning level alternatives were developed using the solutions identified in the Universe of Concepts report. The study team considered the following questions when developing these alternatives. Number 1, where should concepts be placed along the study corridors? 2, why should this concept be used? Does it address a specific need? And 3, how should concepts be combined to address the location's needs? Now, if you've taken a look at the report at all, you may be surprised about how technical and long the report is. And the reality is these interstates are a complex system. And our team spent a lot of time making sure we were building alternatives that worked. Nevertheless, they are still at a planning level and will require further analysis if they are moved forward in the future. Each alternative was then evaluated on several factors. Purpose and need, does the alternative meet the identified transportation needs in the study area? Environmental impacts, what are the impacts on natural, cultural, and community resources? Cost estimates, What are the estimated costs for construction as well as operations and maintenance? Constructability, how long is the construction timeframe and what is the relative difficulty of each alternative? And community goals. Does the alternative address the study's community goals? These goals were aligned with the study's original 4 pillars of quality of life and livability, economic growth and opportunity, transportation and mobility, and transportation for all. Up to 7 planning level alternatives were developed for each spoke. They range from basic reconstruction to transformative redesigns. Alternatives that meet the study's purpose and need and are considered potentially reasonable will be carried forward for further analysis. Those with limited benefits or higher impacts have been eliminated from further consideration. And here are the primary concepts that were considered when building alternatives. And we'll walk through each of these, but let's start with the no-build alternative. The no-build is essentially that, no-build, but it does include preventative maintenance and is considered a baseline condition. It is required as a point of comparison in this Pell study and in NEPA. Rebuild with modern design and materials. This focuses on repairing and replacing aging infrastructure like the bridges and pavement, but it does not change how the interstate functions. It's used to compare the costs and benefits of some of the more transformative alternatives. Rebuild with modern design and materials plus that builds on that basic rebuild by adding small but meaningful upgrades to improve safety and traffic flow. Think of this as like a smart repair. It keeps a similar footprint, but makes the interstate work a bit better for drivers. Added travel lanes. This would add a new lane in each direction where traffic operations are poor or are expected to get worse in the future. And it's designed to reduce congestion and improve travel times, especially in busy areas. Dynamic shoulder lanes. This one's a little bit different. This would use the median shoulder as a travel lane during rush hour. This would give drivers extra capacity when it's needed most. It's flexible and a space-efficient solution. Reversible lane. This would add a single lane in the median that would change direction depending on the traffic flow. For example, heading into downtown in the morning and out of downtown in the evening. And it is ideal for areas where traffic is heavily one-sided during certain times. The recessed interstate. This would lower the highway below the street level. This design would improve sightlines, walkability, and community access while keeping traffic moving, and it can be paired with other upgrades like to improve safety and operations. And finally, the viaduct. The viaduct would raise the interstate considerably higher than a typical bridge that's out there now, up to 65 feet in some locations. This would create a brighter space, open space underneath, and this design would allow for green space, natural light, more pedestrian-friendly areas, transforming what is typically kind of a dark, disconnected zone into a community asset. So the report walks through each of the study spokes and the alternatives identified based on the specific needs of that spoke. Now, due to the complexity of the downtown interstates, we broke up that 6570 spoke into 3 separate sub-spokes. So the 65 spoke, this extends from the I-465, I-65 interchange on the northwest side of town to the 21st Street interchange on 65. 7 alternatives were developed for this spoke, including improvements to 38th Street and I-65. The 65 downtown spoke, this extends from the 21st Street interchange to the west end of the North Split project. 5 alternatives were developed for this spoke, including potential improvements to the West Street interchange, as well as viaduct and recessed options north of the North Split. The 6570 downtown spoke. This one extends south from Washington Street to include the South Split interchange and slightly west on I-70 to the East Street Bridge. and 3 alternatives were developed for this spoke, including improvements to the south split. The 70 downtown spoke extends from the White River to the south split interchange south of downtown. 6 alternatives were developed for this spoke, including both recessed and viaduct options to improve connectivity. The 70 West spoke extends from the 465 I-70 interchange on the west side to just west of West Street. And 5 alternatives were developed for this spoke, including the use of dynamic shoulder lanes to improve mobility. And last but not least, the 70 East spoke extends from the east end of the north split to the 465 I-70 interchange on the east side, and 4 alternatives were developed for this spoke, including potential improvements to the Keystone and Rural Street interchange. So as a result of this evaluation process, each alternative was either recommended to be eliminated or carried forward for further consideration. So this slide shows a summary of the alternatives that were looked at for each spoke and the results. So alternatives carried forward are considered potentially reasonable. These alternatives will be considered in future studies, but still require future analysis. They are represented by the green thumbs up icon on the slide. Eliminated alternatives are considered unreasonable. They will not be evaluated further in the study and likely do not warrant further consideration as part of any subsequent NEPA studies. Alternatives carried forward with construction or operations costs beyond INDOT's traditional funds would be contingent on additional funding being identified. And those are indicated with the yellow dollar sign on the slide. So what's next for Propel ND? The study will result in a wide range of reasonable alternatives for INDOT to consider for future projects. Alternatives carried forward from the study will require further analysis to determine if they are reasonable solutions to the area's transportation needs. It's important to note that no decisions have been made about the future of I-65 and I-70 in Indianapolis. There are multiple factors, including the urgency of identified needs, statewide priorities, and funding availability that need to be considered when identifying future projects. And future projects that come out of the study could occur in the next 5, 10, or even 20 years. Propel ND's evaluation of the corridor identified locations within the study area with more urgent needs that will require more immediate attention. And this data can be found in the study's existing transportation conditions report, which is available at propelnd.com. Some examples of these areas include the Long Bridge from Alabama Street over to Senate Avenue, north of the North Split, and the pavement on the I-70 West Spoke. Public comments on the draft alternatives identification and screening report were accepted through October 5th. We are in the process of reviewing and digesting those comments and are going to be updating that draft report to a final report based on the feedback we received. The final step in Propel Indy will be the publication of a Pell study report, which will summarize and document the study process. And INDOT anticipates Propel Indy's Pell study report to be published in late 2025. And that concludes our presentation. Anna, I don't know if we have time for questions.
We do have for a few questions, certainly. Christine?
Does this corridor in this part qualify for tolling under the new?
The study does not include information on tolling. So at this point, we don't know.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Next, we have the IMPO policy update, and I believe Caitlin is online.
She is. So for those of you that don't know, I feel like 2 years ago, we re-engaged our membership with the Association of MPOs. Partly because he felt like organizationally, things were running smoothly, and I wanted to start to get more involved on the national level. Timing couldn't have worked out better, obviously with the change in administration and lots of changes happening on the national level. IMPO has been critical in kind of convening MPOs across the nation, getting clarity on federal guidance, especially in the time of executive orders. Also, I not only got involved, but I am now sitting on their policy committee. So they have a similar structure to MPOs. They have a technical committee and a policy. And we are gearing up for reauthorization. So it's been entirely, I would argue, I'm gonna geek out, a little bit of a blast to kind of do some Capitol Hill work, interact with some of those folks on trying to shape what the next transportation bill is going to look like. So with that, I'm gonna kick it over to Caitlin.
Thanks, Anna. Thank you, everybody else, for having me today. I'm very excited to speak to you. My name is Caitlin Cook. I'm the Senior Director of Planning and Research with IMPO. And I just want to confirm, are you able to see my slides okay?
We're looking at your, there we go. Now we see the PowerPoint.
Okay, great. I could tell there was a little bit of a lag, so I wanted to make sure. All right, so I know I only have about 10 or 15 minutes today. I'm going to breeze through a couple context setting slides, and then I'm really going to focus in on our reauthorization efforts and hopefully leave some time at the end for any questions. I will also leave contact information as well as links so you can investigate more on your own or follow up afterwards. So a little bit about IMPO, as Anna said, we are the National Association of MPOs. We do like to highlight that everything we do is member driven. We have over 100 MPO staff from around the world, or around the country rather, participating in all of our interest groups, our committees, and we are run by a board of directors, which are elected from our membership and made up of MPO executive directors themselves. So everything we do is driven by MPO staff and comes from the community. With that, I want to dive into a little bit of context setting for our federal policy and the updates that we've been seeing at the national level. With the new administration at the beginning of the year, we saw quite a few changes. A lot of executive orders have been coming out. These are really reshaping federal agencies and priorities. There's been obviously a very big focus on efficiency with the creation of DOGE, and we've continued to see rescissions and rifts when it comes to staffing. All of this is affecting the MPO community, particularly around grant agreements and contracting, as well as discretionary funds. And we are seeing some of this reflected in the conversations for reauthorization. So speaking to some of the grant cancellations, just top of mind, I think for a lot of folks in the industry, as of September, we've started to see the rescission of previously announced, but not executed discretionary awards for Raise and Build and Safe Streets for All. This is part of an ongoing review that's been taking place since March, where over 3,000 unobligated awards have been undergoing an individual project review. We have heard reports that approximately $1.2 billion in discretionary funds could be at risk of being recompeted, so reallocated or withdrawn completely as a part of this. So this is something we're tracking. And again, this kind of feeds into some of the conversations for reauthorization as far as what grant programs we might see continue in the next authorization bill versus ones that might be kind of sunset at the end of the IIJA, our current bill. The USDOT priorities that we've heard so far, they've continued to change. We update this slide every month or so, but they're really coalescing around things like safety. I think that resonates with every region in the country, as well as speeding up project delivery and efficiency, looking for economic opportunity through innovation, strengthening partnerships, particularly with private industry, and then supporting families and communities. We've seen some directives come out around that as well. So the USDOT priorities, it's no surprise, they mirror very closely the administration and have continued to shift This does affect MPOs in that previously these priorities reflected the Biden administration and everything we saw in the IIJA, our current authorization bill. So we are doing our best to stay on top of the shifting priorities and how those would affect MPOs. We do like to highlight, just as an aside, a lot of the administration's executive orders, particularly some other directives, are facing legal challenges, particularly ones around grant awards are one that we are tracking, as well as workforce development. A lot of this is wrapped up in the Administrative Procedures Act, constitutional separation of powers, things like that. So a lot of what we're seeing coming out this year is being challenged in the courts, and we are tracking that pretty closely. All of this is publicly available. We're just keeping our ear to the ground so we can better inform our MPO members when it comes to court cases that might affect things like their contracts, their grants, hiring and staffing, anything that has to do kind of with those federal funds and requirements. Another top of mind item that we obviously need to address real quick is the government shutdown. Obviously, we are still in this shutdown. News reports are saying that we are bracing for a long shutdown. Nobody really knows how long that's going to be. I think we're on our 7th attempt now to pass a bill. The main highlights here, though, are as it relates to USDOT. So highway and transit programs funded through the Highway Trust Fund and the IIJA advance appropriations, those are insulated. So we are in a better spot than a lot of industries during the shutdown. We have seen some workforce impacts with furloughs, but federal highway and FTA programs and staff on the whole continue operations. So we will keep our ear to the ground on that as well. And to stay informed on this, we have a lot of trackers and newsletters. We put out a weekly alert called the National Beat that covers everything from USDOT grant cancellations, government shutdown, IIJ obligation. All of that is wrapped up in this. So we are tracking this weekly and putting out resources for members. So that's a little bit of context setting, things that are top of mind for a lot of folks. I want to shift gears to reauthorization. It may feel like it's a ways out. The current IIJA, or current authorization bill, it expires September 30th of next year. But we have been working on our reauthorization priorities for almost 3 years now. It's a really big ramp up to these authorization bills. For context, these bills can last anywhere from 7 to 12 years, sometimes longer, sometimes shorter, but they are in place for a significant amount of time. So we put a lot of work and effort into preparing for them to ensure that our priorities and the priorities of the community are included. So we work closely with Congress as a part of our reauthorization. We are on the Hill. Sometimes it feels like weekly, meeting with members and staff. What we have heard out of Congress leading up to this, before the shutdown really took precedent, was the desire for consolidated or reduced discretionary funds. So those are those grants that are available, looking for more authority or flexibility in funding, particularly to states, permitting reforms. So kind of reducing red tape, getting projects through implementation quicker. This is kind of in lockstep with the administration and those priorities that we've heard. And then focusing on performance measures and streamlining technology. So these are themes we're hearing out of Congress. We are in kind of the beginning stages of the bill. We're looking at potential bills being released and markups. So we're at a stage right now with Congress where we're going to see a lot of associations and interest groups submitting their own bills and markup language to Congress and key committee staffers, looking to get their proposals integrated into the reauthorization bill. Over winter, we anticipate some potential floor time, most likely in the House, and we'll get deep into it come next spring. We should have a better sense of what is going to be in the reauthorization bill by then. Something to note, We do have midterm elections next year. While those are after the bill expires, we do anticipate a certain amount of politics coming into play with reauthorization, with it being a midterm election year that could affect what programs and concepts that different members of Congress support as it relates to their own political campaigning. So, as you mentioned, we're kind of in that beginning stages where folks are submitting their own proposals to be integrated into reauthorization. APTA, which is the National Association of Public Transit, has submitted their recommendations. There are two major federal changes that would affect MPOs. The first would be it would an effect on the voting seats for transit agencies. So they have suggested that providers of public transportation representing at least 75% of annual unlinked passenger trips in an MPO boundary be guaranteed voting seats. Now, transit providers are included on boards by and large across the nation. This may or may not have an impact on board composition. This is something we're still working with APTA to fully understand the impacts of what that would look like. They've also suggested an appeals process, which would require FTA and Federal Highway to establish an appeals process to investigate complaints by public transit agencies that allege MPO procedures have been violated. So would be subject to judicial review and have a 30-day review period. This is also something brand new that we're working with APTA to fully understand the impacts of. But these are just suggestions from one agency, one association to Congress, similar to how we submit our recommendations as well. In addition to APTA, we have also been coordinating with ASHTA, which represents the state DOTs. They have suggested raising the cap on transferring funds between programs like NHPP and STPG. So right now they're allowed to transfer funds. They'd like to increase that cap. That's been introduced with key members of Congress. That could do a variety of things. It could allow states to address infrastructure priorities more efficiently. There are some concerns about what that could mean for multimodal projects. So we're continuing to meet with ASHTO. Again, it feels like we maybe meet weekly at this point, just to stay on top of reauthorization and coordinate our efforts as we lead into the new bill. And then finally, we have our own legislative priorities. Really, we're looking at things like increasing metropolitan planning funds. So those are the core operation funds for all MPOs. We really want to empower regional decision-making and enhance the role of the MPO, knowing that it is the table where the entire region can come together and make decisions on behalf of the region. We'd like to right-size, align, and streamline. So looking at things like reducing local match requirements on planning funds, allowing carryover, streamlining reviews and permitting, really looking at how can we get projects from concept to the roadway, bikeway, bridge, get it out onto the road as quickly and efficiently as possible. And then finally, focusing on safety. This is, again, something I think that resonates with every region. We have seen safety performance measures, so vehicular crashes, bike ped crashes, they've been rising in a lot of regions. So looking at how can we continue to provide funding and support for MPOs that do safety planning work. Again, I'll share these links, but we have links out to our reauthorization booklet. It includes a member action plan of things that you can do to get involved. And it also includes more detail on each of our legislative priorities and why we feel that they are a priority for our community. I mentioned at the very beginning, everything we do is member-led and member-driven. That is particularly true for our reauthorization priorities. We did extensive survey, interview, and case study work leading up to this to come to these priorities. And then finally, I want to mention, we work closely with what's called the LOT Coalition. It's the local officials in transportation. It includes these agencies to the right, so these national associations like the National League of Cities, the United States Conference of Mayors, the National Association of Counties. All of these national associations and us, we work together. We meet weekly, sometimes more than once a week, because we represent almost the entirety of the planning and transportation community in the country. Everything from rural to urban, we have it covered. And so we have been working incredibly closely for the last 2 years to build legislative priorities together that support each other and advance the state of the practice on the whole. And what we have noticed as a group, when we look at all of our memberships together, is there is a mismatch between things like resources and responsibility. So we know that local and regional governments plan for, own, and maintain the majority of infrastructure, but when it comes to sub-allocated funds and federal funding that trickles down, they only receive about 14% of federal formula funding. We know that local infrastructure challenges are growing. We are tracking the age of bridges. We're looking at safety numbers. We're looking at things like inflation and project costs. And the needs of the system to maintain it in a good state of repair, those are growing. So having funding levels that will allow us to maintain that good state of repair are critical. And those funding levels have not kept pace with the system. So we look at things like the Highway Trust Fund and the gas tax at the federal level, that funding has remained stagnant. And then finally, local and regional governments plan for and own that infrastructure, but they don't have an equal amount of decision-making authority. And so what we're looking at doing are four things with the LOT Coalition. We're really looking at rebalancing funding and decision-making authority. So a lot of that is streamlining, strengthening project selection and accountability, keeping local and regional eligibility for competitive programs and reducing red tape, and really looking at modernizing formulas for safety and innovation, making sure that those funds make it down to the regional level. We want to also strengthen planning and project delivery. We want to boost IMPO resources. We want to eliminate or reduce match where possible. Again, this is all getting behind projects, getting out onto the roads as quickly and efficiently as possible so that we are being good stewards of federal funds. We also want to support rural regions. While we are a urban-based kind of organization, we're around an urban core, we recognize the importance that rural regions play in the metropolitan area. They're an important connection, especially when it comes to things like farm to market roads and economic development. So we want to make sure that they are also being provided dedicated formula funding, and we're strengthening the coordination between rural and urban areas. And then finally, streamlining delivery. So how do we right-size permitting, expand categorical exclusions for NEPA, and accelerate projects on the whole so that we can deliver on projects and use federal funds as quickly and efficiently as possible. So these are the main priorities. As Anna mentioned in the beginning, we've been working with the LOT Coalition to make sure that all of our organizations can align behind these priorities so that we are stronger when we go to Congress and present these. And with that, I do want to wrap it up. I know I didn't have much time. I hope it didn't go too much over. We do have Katie Economou, our legislative director's email up here. If you have very specific questions about policy and our work with Congress, I would encourage you to reach out to her or reach out to your own NPO with Anna. She's a great resource. She's on the policy committee with Katie. So she is in the know with everything that's going on and can keep you updated. And with that, I will pause in case there are any questions.
Do you have any questions for Caitlin? None? Well, Caitlin, we thank you for your time and for the presentation, and we look forward to working with you more in the future.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Caitlin.
All right.
It's a crystal ball, but I'm pretty excited about, right, like trying to change match requirements, bringing more money to the region, less on what I'm going to call the national federal level of grants and pushing more through the formula funds. Crystal ball, what's actually going to get in the transportation bill, but pretty excited about some of those talking points and the coalition coming together. Every time I'm in DC or at an IMPO presentation, there are members of the LOT Coalition speaking on behalf of the county commissioner group or the conference of mayors. And so pretty excited to kind of see what's going to come out of that. I know those drafts, when they start happening, we will definitely be reviewing and getting back to IMPO on impacts. The FTA, Indigo, APTA, that was a big conversation at IMPO amongst directors, and it was like not an issue for us in our region. But that was definitely a big conversation. It was like we have a great working relationship with their transit provider, they're the major one. So, but other regions are definitely concerned.
Has there been any discussion about, or concerns about pushing funding to state and state capability or local capability administratively for additional funding? I know that that's always a concern as we talk about, putting a lot more money someplace that doesn't necessarily have the administrative capability and then unclogging that money to get it to
The pipeline.
projects. Yeah.
Certainly, there has been some conversation, there's even been some discussion about the ability for MPOs to opt in to receive infrastructure money directly, to bypass the DOTs. I will tell you, smaller MPOs are concerned about their ability, right, to be that bottleneck, and so that was discussed at potentially being an opt-in. But some of that pipeline has started to exist with the Safe Roads and Streets for All is a direct, like that does not go through NDOT. So there's been some precedent already of direct flow of money as through, instead of using the DOT as a pass-through. You may have noticed, if you didn't pick up on it, one of the things that we're pushing is eliminating what I call the use it or lose it. So, right, like to allow multiple years, these are complex projects that you are working on, right, to have it tied to a specific year, right, that we're required to spend the $65 million, every penny of it, otherwise it reverts back to the DOT. We are asking for flexibility on that. We're not the only state that is being held to that type of policy. So, right, a change in that would be good, certainly. Streamlining, trying to make quicker projects, eliminate some of the bureaucratic process, right, are all things we're advocating for, so. Okay, you okay if I go
Yep,
the other
you're
end? Okay. The Safe Streets and Roads for All Committee is reconvening, so if you had tech members, we will be sending out an email. We did execute that grant. It was one of the ones that was in a bottleneck. So we are moving forward. If you are a community that has received your own Safe Streets and Roads for All grant, you are required to coordinate with us, right, just to make sure we're not duplicating efforts or buying the same data twice. So on that, we did actually buy some replica additional Safe Streets data that your engineers should be aware of for crashes, those types of things. So just a heads up. Also, if you haven't seen, you should have received an IMPO invoice for fiscal and calendar year 2026. Each community is slightly different. Some people go ahead and pay that right away. Some people hold over until their 2026 books open up. Either way, we are asking for payment by the February election process. The February policy committee is typically the deadline for that. So just a heads up on that. And then Cole covered, one of the big things that we've done in the last couple of weeks is open the call for projects. So you should, if you're an elected official, be getting with your engineering team and figuring out what projects you are going after. Probably have already had some of those conversations, but just FYI, and Black Friday is an easy day for me to remember. Not certain why we chose that day, but so that deadline is Black Friday. So any other questions that I can help address for you today?
You will.
I don't think so.
Do you have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Start busy like everybody.